Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone, to the next in ScaledOn's Q&A sessions. We are super excited to be talking about SEO again today and to be joined again by Alec Newcomb, ScaledOn's founder, serial entrepreneur, and resident AI enthusiast. I know we're going to talk about all things AI and multimodal today, which I'm super excited about. Quick introduction for me. I am Courtney. I am ScaledOn's SEO director, and I am excited to be joining you today. Any questions that you may have for myself or Alec or anyone on the SEO team, you can send through to us at team@scaledon.com. That's TEAM, team@scaledon.com, or via the contact form on the scaledon.com website. We are always here to help however we can. Alec, welcome.
It is great to see you. I'm always very excited to do these things, so thank you for hosting once again.
Absolutely. We are super excited that you can join us. Today, I thought we would talk a little bit about multimodal search along with AI. I know AI is a huge focus for us here at ScaledOn, and you have been leading that charge of making sure that we here at ScaledOn are early adopters of all the efficiencies and effectiveness plays that AI can bring. But search is more than any one modality, right? It's more than just words on a screen or typing into a search box. And I think that is really shifting more and more each day, right? Like we talk now to our search boxes more than we probably ever have before. We send photos and say, find me this, find me that, right? We're watching and listening to the answers that we get. So I thought this would be a good session to kind of unpack a little bit about that. So let's talk a little bit about what multimodal search, actually means, from your perspective and what you think of that as far as its impact on traditional SEO. Like, how big of a shift do you think that is compared to what we think of as traditional SEO?
Yeah, look, I think, as someone who ran a search engine in my prior life, I think there's a lot of hypesters that want to sort of say, hey, this is all super, super different. Look, image search. I mean, I remember back in the day, we released like an early MP3 search engine, and it was a big deal. So multimodal has been going on for a long time. I think the difference today is to come back and think about the the effectiveness of that. So one of the things that I use all the time is Google Lens. Right. So, like before you might go in and you were searching for an image because you wanted some stock photography or you wanted something for your kids, like whatever your use case was, and that was sort of like into the browser on your desktop, to get back. And now I think the way we need to think about it is more like a constellation of this multimodal, where before it was largely a desktop experience that then came into your phone on apps. And now, right, it's really like, there's a lot of voice activity that goes on in the car. There's a lot of voice activity that goes on, in potentially your kitchen, or
Yep.
God forbid you have a Samsung fridge that talks to you, right? And so it's really expanded, where those places are, right?
Yeah, right. I think that's the key differentiator. There's a lot of things that have been in existence for quite a while in one way, shape, or form, right? Like AI to an extent is not as new as I think we all think it is, but the rate of adoption seems to be the biggest shift, amongst all these things because of how much multimodal has been folded into, exactly to your point, like your refrigerator, your appliances, your, Alexa devices and things like that. As far as rate of adoption and the things that are influencing visibility, what do you think are some of the signals that SEOs should be watching to really understand how multimodal is influencing visibility?
Yeah, so I think like the way I like to think about it is about diversification, right? So in today's era where ChatGPT has 800 million monthly users, Google's worried about that. They're throwing things against the wall as fast as they can, right? Some of them are sticking, some of them are not. But in general, you're getting less clicks to your website. It's about diversification. And so when I hear multimodal, I hear like opportunities, right? So there's a lot of people, for example, that said, hey, you know what? Maybe they did like a little sprint on Pinterest, right? And guess what? I know some people that are very successful on that. I know some folks that like have focused their efforts on Reddit. Maybe you focus your efforts on TikTok, right? So these other platforms where before, you really didn't think about optimizing for them. Like one of my favorites, as you know, is Amazon, right? And a lot of times there's not a lot of competition, to getting sort of, links and connections off of Amazon. So there's a lot of areas where there are hundreds of millions of people or tens of millions of people using a platform that is not Google, right? That you can go interact with. And I think in any sort of strategy that you put together, you're going to have to be diversified. And this is starting where AI comes in. And some of these things that might not have been possible for many, many businesses are suddenly in the realm of possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely leveling the playing field as far as expertise, right? Because you now have your AI agent that you can go to, to seek an answer, with the caveat that you still have to be careful about those hallucinations, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Yes.
Do you think, ChatGPT and the AI tools really could become alternative search engines? Like I know ChatGPT has talked about their own. How much of a threat do you really think this is posing to Google? Do are they justified in their concerns with that high rate of adoption?
Yeah. So first of all, like it's there was there's again, I'm a student of history, so I think the best way to look at this is to think about prior media transitions. So at one point we had newspapers. We transitioned some newspapers to radio. Newspapers didn't disappear. We then transitioned from radio to television. Radio didn't disappear. You know what I mean? So Google's not going to disappear. Anyone that's claiming that is crazy. But I think what happens is some of the consumer behavior is shifting, and just like like today, when you log on to television, or your video platform of choice, it's like there's 1,000 options, right? So you've got Hulu and you've got Apple TV and you've got HBO Max, and you know what I mean, like, and then maybe you have Disney Plus, and then on and on, and then you might still have these pieces, and the same thing is happening here, is that we're going to get more and more choice. But I think 800 million, like when you look at the numbers, 800 million active monthly users on ChatGPT has got Google worried. That was a very fast growth rate, and they're clearly gunning for the consumer end of things. But guess what? Running a search engine's hard. Google is the people that came up with a lot of this technology, so I don't think it's a good idea to count Google out in any way. And then when you actually look at the data, a lot of the actual results in ChatGPT, or Perplexity, or pick the engine of your choice outside of Bing, are actually coming from Google, and sort of traditional Google results. So I think these are sort of like joined ecosystems. But I think Google is very worried about this, because it has the potential, if this rate continues over 5 to 10 years, Google's in a very different spot.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, but looking at it from the business perspective and the opportunities that businesses can take, with visual SEO and with AI SEO, and trying to kind of fold all of those in together, right? So that the components that you're putting out there are ranking in search, whether it be multimodal, AI, Google, what have you. How do you think brands can make images and videos, since we're here to talk multimodal, more machine readable, so that they are showing up and helping in AI search and traditional search?
Yeah, so to give an example that we've been talking about, with sort of a client that ScaledOn has been doing a lot of work with, right? If you think about kicking up ChatGPT, I talk to ChatGPT all the time, right? So I'm gonna go put her on for a second here. Hello, ChatGPT.
Hey there. Great to hear from you. What can I help you with today?
And the number one thing that I observe, like my wife doing or my daughter doing, is they turn on the video now, and they show ChatGPT. So like, hey, I want some decorating ideas. What would be good colors that go with this? And I think we have to realize that the days of just sort of sitting in front of your computer or your device and just typing those things in has ended. And I think this is really important in a world where ChatGPT and many of these other, Google is doing a phenomenal job on video, but where, potentially it's a video to video piece. And how is your brand interfacing with that video? right? So like if somebody comes back in and says, hey, and let's say that you're a home, an interior brand, selling home, things in the home space. Guess what? They may be asking ChatGPT about colors and those individual pieces, and you're going to have to optimize for that. And then what they're expecting to see back often is, again, video, right? If they started in the medium of video, they would like to potentially see some video coming back at them, and guess what? Like, sending them your brochure or catalog via snail mail is not the experience that they're hoping to have with your brand.
Yeah, much more interactive and certainly, instantaneous, right? Like we've always been a culture that likes a quick turn, but even more so today with voice and with video and multimodal, I think people are looking at, having something immediately read out an answer or come back to them with conversational phrasing, right? Like you notice that in the way ChatGPT just responded to you. Not robotic, very much, let's have a conversation. How can I help you today? Things like that. How do you think that brands can adapt content for how people speak to AI assistants, right? Like so that they're interfacing.
Yeah, the first thing that I'm seeing is there's a subset of brands that are just blocking, they're using Cloudflare, they're blocking the AI crawlers, they're looking at the AI crawlers as a bad thing, and I think that's a dangerous path. Like in some industries, in some places, right? If you're a publisher, right? If you've got proprietary data, if you've got, you're sort of in the government security end of things, that might be a different piece. But guess what? Like if I want to know what colors your couches come in, right? And you're not letting ChatGPT go look at, and read that, I think you're going to be at a disadvantage, because I think what's happening is that there's this new layer forming where particularly if you have a higher ticket item, you're going into ChatGPT, you might be doing research, and really that decisioning is happening inside of these answer engines, right? And whether it's Google AI overviews or ChatGPT or Perplexity, like let's sort of lump them all similarly. There's sort of iteration and ideation happening there, and if your brand doesn't show up at all, I believe that you're at a disadvantage.
What are some opportunities or advantage that that can be shared with companies or clients or people who really fear what you're talking about, the AI evolution? Like they're blocking it because they're afraid of it and they have trouble seeing the opportunity. What are kind of some recommendations or some places to start that might make them open their minds a little?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of testing, right? And what I would suggest is if this is something that either your leadership is against, or maybe you're in banking, or you're in certain areas where you're like, hey, Alec, this is not our norm. Guess what? It is really easy to do some testing, and you don't necessarily, Courtney, need to do that testing on your own website. Guess what? You can come back and set up a Medium site. You can set up a Substack site. Like there's lots of other ways that you could potentially go test a subset of your brand's content or your brand's voice. One of my favorite places to go do that is YouTube, right? So like I think a ton of brands haven't really embraced the potential of their YouTube channel, and that can be a great place, because we know that that if you put it on YouTube, it's going to end up in Googleville, right? That's a great place to go test out some of these pieces. And again, I would be doing like a simple test to sort of say, hey, we're putting a blog post on our website. We're putting a YouTube video with sort of the same title topic. We're posting that heavily on social. You know what I mean? We're generating some real consumer engagement and feedback on that topic that we think is important in service of our customers. And then see, did you get business from that? Did you get traffic from that? Did you get visibility from that? And I think, many of the traditional metrics where, we've been judging how many people we got visiting the website, how much time they spent on the website, depth of visit, these kinds of things are going to go away, because fundamentally, if I'm having a video conversation with ChatGPT, they're never going to come to the website.
Yeah, right. And I think that's the that's the biggest thing I think that certainly SEOs are trying to adapt to right now. And the key word in all of that I just took away was metrics. But real quick, we're at about the halfway mark here in our 30-minute chat today. So I'll pause quickly to remind everyone that you are joining us as part of the ScaledOn Q&A session. We host these sessions bi-weekly and talk about a variety of different topics across the digital marketing landscape. So today in particular, we're talking about SEO, but we will be talking in the future about Amazon and paid media and all the things. So you are welcome to join us at any time in any of those sessions via our YouTube channel, and certainly to reach out to us directly via the website or via email, team@scaledon.com. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts that you'd like to share with us about this or any of the topics that we chat about on a bi-weekly basis. But I'm going to hop right back into it after that little pause for station identification, because you touched on metrics, and I think that's a big piece, that everyone's struggling with a little bit right now, because some of our more traditional metrics of success are really taking a hit, right? With click-throughs and a zero-click environment. So what are some of the new metrics that you think might become kind of like the North Star for SEO, in the AI and multimodal landscape?
Yeah, so I think this is a really important topic, and I think if today you're using Moz or SEMrush or Ahrefs, like some of the traditional tools, they're really struggling with this. Okay, and I think there's always been a gap. And what I would suggest, that you go do is do some of your own auditing, because these, and I'm just going to pick on ChatGPT, because ChatGPT has memory, right? And because, I've been using it extensively, right? I might have a very, very different experience than you for putting in the exactly same words or queries. And we really today as marketers don't understand what that looks like. And this is sort of why I use that fragmentation piece. I think this is going to get worse. I think this is going to get harder, for us to go do and take a look at. So what I would suggest is just start with your own audit, right? And measure where you are today. And is your brand showing up the way you want it today, against that? And again, I would be looking at this in Bing, do more than just the Google ChatGPT world, right? Sort of come back and say, hey, you know what? I looked at the brand in Bing. I looked at the brand in sort of the Microsoft environment. I looked at it in ChatGPT. I looked at it in Perplexity. I looked at it in Google. You know what I mean? Go, and again, and it's going to vary if you're B2C or B2B. You gotta, take a look in your particular environment. And I would note that down and say, hey, am I happy with where I'm showing up there? And then if you're not happy with sort of what came back, like I was recently with someone, and they were very surprised to see that their competitor came up even for some of their branded terms, right? That they put in there, and that was a shock to them. And so I think that's a really great place to start. And then you want to put these metrics together to say, what would success look like for our brand? If we put a 90-day plan together, if we put a 6-month plan together, what's important for us? Are we interested in getting more visibility? Are we interested in getting more sales? What are the things that those outcomes that we're really trying to drive? And that's where I'd start that conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely, it will be an interesting evolution, right? Because I think it's a lot, especially for marketers who have to report up to other decision makers who are very used to having a very finite set, of metrics to determine success, and having to kind of redefine, what that looks like. Thinking back to what we were just talking about as far as testing and where to start with testing. I think that, one of the areas that always presents an opportunity is how you repurpose content and things that you already have. So when we think about multimodal, it's so, in these conversations, it's so easy to branch off into so many different areas because it's such a broad topic with SEO and with AI, but trying to kind of bring us back into the multimodal, how would you test those things that you talked about by repurposing existing content for multimodal visibility? So how do you take a performing blog post and test it in a video realm?
Yeah, so one of my favorite ways to go do that is I personally I don't have a lot of video capabilities, so I use a tool called Descript. So I can take a Zoom meeting, you know what I mean? I can take a conversation with a colleague or a client or a student, and I can turn that into content, and I can turn it into written content, I can turn it into audio content, and then because it's like a word processor, I can turn it into video content. So again, like I would take that kernel. So let's say that there's this really important blog, for you or your brand. Okay, so like how do we double down on that, right? And say, oh, you know what? I'm going to go post something in YouTube. I'm going to go post something in LinkedIn. I'm going to go post something in Twitter, you know what I mean? Or X, like, how am I sort of building that circle? And guess what? I might not be doing all of those things the same week, right? But what I'm trying to do is take that and sort of build a hub and spoke system around it so that it's supporting, so that I give signals both to the traditional, sort of, I'll call it Google pieces, but also to some of these new platforms. So can I get that conversation into Reddit? You know what I mean? Can I get it into TikTok? Can I get it into some other areas that, again, it has to be appropriate for the brand and, and relevant for you, but can I get it into some of these other areas that we know that these answer engines, are monitoring and taking a look at?
Yeah. Are there AI video tools that, that you see being particularly effective? Because I do think, we've certainly seen that open up as one of the best opportunities for brands who maybe before were budget prohibitive, when it came to video, because video was a huge expense, and AI has kind of opened up that opportunity. Is there, I know Descript kind of takes your written content or your meetings or whatnot and gives you different opportunities there. Are there other tools that you'd
Yeah,
recommend?
I mean, I think at the moment, Google is leading, right? So, and again, I think that's hard. If you're on a sort of Microsoft stack, I think you're video disadvantaged today, you know what I mean? So, but for those of you that are running in Google land, you can turn on the Google, like it's, their nickname was Nano Banana, for their video pieces, and it's really good at, you can upload another photo or a product photo, you know what I mean? You can add people to it. You can, put video together very easily. And again, they're very short clips, but you can stitch two clips together, to go do that. And then, there's a whole source. I still am a Midjourney user, so I'm using Google and Midjourney, and again, at my level, I'm stitching together a bunch of stills, and then you can stitch those stills together to create, actual video from it. And again, like I think in today's day and age, what was economically untenable to brands a year ago is now, well in it. And I think, we've had some interesting case studies that I've heard from both students and clients, where returns got reduced for one client by 40% by using video,
Interesting.
in an e-commerce experience. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think there is, when we think about video, I think a lot of people are thinking about like, really edgy, top of the funnel,
Yeah.
forward pieces. And where I'm seeing the most economic value is actually not there, Courtney, today. It's much more mundane things, which is like, hey, putting a how-to video together or getting team talking heads going, and like sort of stuff that you need to do a bunch of, and you could put into factory mode, but often you're not.
Yeah, right. And it's really an opportunity for brands to embrace it as a differentiator for the customer experience, like you just mentioned, because the customer can see people interacting with the product and really have a much deeper understanding of what to expect when they get someone's product or service because of the different videos. I think we've all had experiences where we've looked at something in just a flat image, and then when it arrives in the mail, it's not what we thought it was going to be from that image. So, definitely a customer experience piece that's key, because regardless of all of these changes with SEO, keeping your customer, top of mind and providing a good user experience for them throughout the search experience all the way through to the product, definitely I think remains a key focus. And I know we talk to customers and prospective customers a lot about that, right? That as long as you're keeping your customer and their experience top of mind, you're in a good place. So, in our remaining couple of minutes here, I think it's always good to talk about the future. and how what our vision of that is and how we see, how we can help people with that. So if you could give one piece of advice to future proof an SEO strategy for the next 12 months, right? Like we're getting ready to kick off a new year. So, how would you recommend that companies future proof their SEO strategy for the coming year?
Well, first of all, I think like I would poke at sort of SEO is dead, or like there's a lot of these, sort of black and white pieces. And and the reality is it's probably for most brands continue to be 20 or 40% of your traffic. You know what I mean? And so you're going to have to allocate, I think just as much effort to it as you did in 2024 or 2025 as you are in 2026. I think what's going to change is, the acceleration of the tools, the fragmentation of the options is going to, necessitate more testing. And so I think there are a lot of shiny baubles in this new land, and I think it's going to become really incumbent upon you to figure out the stuff that's actually producing revenue, that's actually producing incrementality. Because just because it's a nice fad or shiny bauble doesn't mean it's actually driving incremental sales for your brand. And so I think that's the piece, is like, okay, have you taken some baseline metrics? You know what I mean? Like, what does success look like in this new world, that you're trying to drive through?
Yeah. Yeah. I think SEO has been declared dead, dozens of times in the past, right? And yet, we're still here to tell the tale. And I think that'll be the case as long as there's search and internet, there'll be a need to optimize, for search for certain. I do want to take one quick minute because I think one of the opportunities, if you've enjoyed the chat that we've had today with Alec, I think one of the opportunities that exists as well is to learn from Alec. Alec teaches courses. So do you have upcoming courses coming up that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I do. So the next thing that's coming up is we're doing a boot camp sort of here in New Hampshire. So you have to be local. It's not going to be online.
Oh,
It'll be in Manchester, New Hampshire, and it's out on the UNH PD&T site. And we're sort of doing a boot camp, a marketing AI boot camp to get you ready, so that you can rock your 2026. I look forward to seeing folks there if they want to join us.
yeah, future proof that strategy. But as I know I've mentioned a couple of times, we're here with, bells on, right, to answer any questions anybody has. And certainly you can reach out to us, whether it's, to pick Alec's brain some more on this AI revolution.
Yeah, and your brain. I mean, I think, look, you've got a lot of practical knowledge, chatting with clients every day. And I think that's the piece, is that don't be shy about asking questions. There's a lot of confusing pieces. I think there's a lot of people that try to make this very confusing, and that's not helpful to anyone. So don't be shy about reaching out. We're always here and very happy, to lend an ear for a quick meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I think, our approach that AI is an opportunity and not something to be feared is at the forefront of what we're doing in the conversations that we're having. So we're here to help if we can for anybody. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if there are questions or things that you'd like to dig in further with what we talked about today. Otherwise, Alec, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Courtney. I always enjoy chatting.
Absolutely. Take care. Good to see you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Ready for AI-powered growth? Book your SEO strategy call at ScaledOn.com.